Go for the pulls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
What's up, everybody, and welcome in to the Philly Sports Power Hour on this cold Wednesday in Philadelphia. Only a few days away from Christmas, but it feels anything but the Christmas spirit in the city of Philadelphia with everything that's going on with this Philadelphia Eagles team following 3 straight losses. So I want to try to keep it positive to start the show. So we're going to talk about a team for a little bit that is kicking ass in the NHL, and that's our Philadelphia Flyers. And I know not everyone are hockey fans in the chat, but we have to dedicate a few minutes to this Philadelphia Flyers team. We'll talk a little 76ers, and then I want to jump back in to this Philadelphia Eagles team. A lot to talk about. Are we seeing a delayed Super Bowl hangover? Are you worried about the culture of this team? Are you concerned that Jalen Hurts is having the same regression we saw with Carson Wentz? I'm not, but I know a lot of people are, so we'll talk about that. And then I want to take a look around the NFC East and the different scenarios for this Philadelphia Eagles team to be the NFC East champion for back-to-back seasons. But I see everybody checking in on the Power Hour. I appreciate all of you. Let's get a little roll call in the chat. Dark-skinned Carson, good morning. Godfrey Wilson checking in from Tulsa, Oklahoma. Ringo Island, love the new name, and we'll talk about it. I actually just tweeted out. Keely Ringo, according to Pro Football Focus, was the highest graded defensive player in pass coverage on Monday night against the Seattle Seahawks. Shouldn't come as a surprise if you were watching that football game. The 2 lowest graded, Josh Jobe and James Bradbury. So we'll talk about that. Love the Ringo Island name. Wine Niners Wine in the house. Loves his Flyers, man, as you should. They're playing some really good hockey right now. Philly 007, good morning. WCBJJ, good morning. Fat Falk, good morning. Thunderbird, good morning. And we are also streaming live on TikTok. This is the Philly Sports Power Hour coming to you every day from 10 to 11. A little bit of bad news for some people in the chat who love to see Kayla Santiago on Wednesdays. She just got called into her other job, had to do a late shoot, so it's going to run over. We're not going to have Kayla joining the show today. So Kayla will not be joining the show, so you just get an hour of me today. And if you guys didn't check in for the Legal Hands to the Face show last night, we had a great show, 90 minutes, right here on the JAKIB Sports Network. Ray Didinger was the guest. Always nice talking to Ray, especially with all these issues, we'll call them, with this Philadelphia Eagles team and what we've seen over the last couple of weeks. So check that out. You can watch it here on JAKIB Sports. You could head over to any of your podcast platforms to hear the audio Legal Hands to the Face. So I appreciate all of you guys here. I appreciate the kind words. More people checking in. We got Jason A-Team. Ringo Island, thank you, man. I do appreciate that. So let's jump in. Let's talk a little Philadelphia Flyers. This Philadelphia Flyers team wins again last night, 3-2 in overtime. Samuel Erson, the backup goalie, is on a tear. So if you're not following, Carter Hart has some undisclosed illness that he's been battling. He talked to the media last week, said they kind of figured out what it is. He's hoping that he can get better. But in his absence, backup Sam Urson, man, playing some really good hockey in net for the Fly Guys. 8-1-1 in his last 10. Another overtime win last night. Some big saves last night. And you look at this Philadelphia Flyers team. And I've talked to you guys about the Eagles, that we weren't just overreacting to 2 or 3 games, that it's been all season. Well, we're not just overreacting to a small sample size now from this Flyers team. They are close to 40% in to this regular season, and they're sitting at number 2 in the Metropolitan Division. They're 18-10-3 to start the year. And head coach John Tortorella had the quote of the season so far. When describing this Philadelphia Flyers team, he said, "We got balls." We got balls is the way John Tortorella wants to talk about this Flyers team. Is there a better quote for a Philadelphia team than that? So if you guys are hockey fans, tune in. Tune in. They are hot. They've got points in 9 straight, 7-0-2 in their last 9. They're 8-1-2 in their last 11. And they won again in overtime, which gives them a record of 6-3 past regulation this year. Last year, for the entire season, they were 5-13 past regulation. They already have more wins this year past regulation than they had all season last year. This team could be special. And I've said it before on this show, I don't have any crazy visions of grandeur that they're going to go win a Stanley Cup with this roster. But they are making Danny Briere, the general manager, seriously question this rebuild, quote unquote. Because when the trade deadline comes, what do you do now with this Flyers team? They're competing, and they're not only winning games against bad teams, they're beating good hockey teams. They have a great chemistry. So we all want them to rebuild. That was the plan. We all thought this was a tear-down rebuild that was going to take a couple of seasons. But this team is a good team. And we're not overreacting by saying that now. It's no longer a small sample size. They have been the best team in hockey since November 10th. The most points with 28, 13-3-2 in their last 18 games. Come on. Let's get a little Flyers love, guys. When things seem like they're falling apart for our Philadelphia Eagles, let's get a little Flyers love. Because there is nothing better than playoff hockey in South Philadelphia. And if you've never been to a Flyers game, if you've never gone, if you're a person who says, "Hey, I don't like hockey," go see it live. Trust me, go see it live, because it is a completely different experience in the building than it is on TV. I actually prefer to watch football on television. I prefer to watch all my football games on TV than in the stadium. I think you see more. I like the replays. But hockey, completely different sport on TV versus being there in person. So if you haven't been to a Flyers game, if you haven't turned back to this team because they've been so bad for the last couple of seasons, now's the time to come back. No one's going to complain that you're a bandwagon jumper. They've been bad. But now's the time to turn back and watch a team that is well coached, that's playing hard, and surprisingly is pretty damn good. 18-10-3 to start this season. Love it, man. Loving my Fly Guys. But that'll be it. I know we're not all hockey fans. That'll be the extent. I gave 5 minutes to our Flyers. I know that's a little much for some people. And we didn't get a chance to talk because I was on a roll yesterday about the Philadelphia Eagles, so we didn't get a chance to talk. 76ers drop a close one after winning, 6 or 7 straight. They lose on Monday night to the Chicago Bulls. Tough game. They're back in action tonight against a really good Minnesota Timberwolves team. Best team in the Western Conference right now, according to record. But the Sixers are playing well. We talk about the Flyers being well coached. Sixers are well coached. We knew Nurse was going to be a good coach. We knew he was going to be better than Doc Rivers. They're playing well, and Joel Embiid, my God, is absolutely dominating the NBA right now. Leads the NBA in points per game at 34.4. Top 5 in the NBA in rebounds per game at 11.8. And the craziest thing is he's doing that, and he's 50th in minutes per game. Think about that. Joel Embiid leads the NBA in points per game, top 5 in rebounds per game, and 50th in points per game. When Embiid is on the court, he is absolutely unstoppable. And I know what everybody's thinking, because I'm thinking it too. None of this matters unless he can do it in the playoffs. None of this matters unless they get out of the second damn round in the playoffs. But the Sixers are doing to me, and probably to all of you, what they do to us every year. They're sucking us back in. In fact, I'm rocking my Sixers shirt today. Sucking us back in. Every year I say, I'm not going to care this year. I'm not going to care about the regular season. I'm not going to get myself all excited for Joel Embiid to win an MVP. I don't care about any of it. All I want to see is them get out of the second round. But what happens? They start playing well, Embiid starts dominating, and I'm back in. But at least this year, there's a chance things are going to be different. We have a different head coach. We no longer have the James Hardens or the Ben Simmons of the world. We have a likable team. We have Tyrese Maxey, who's fun to watch, seeing this kid grow into a superstar. So that's why I'm back in on the 76ers. Just don't break our hearts again. And I still think they lack a third piece. Tobias Harris isn't it. But they are extremely deep. You know, we usually have Kayla Santiago on the show on Wednesdays. She's not going to be here today. But you know how much she loves how deep this 76ers team is. A lot of depth, a lot of good bench players. But just like I was talking about the Flyers having a good team, the Sixers have a good team. It seems like there is a good chemistry. There's a good mojo around this team, something that's lacked in previous seasons. When you had James Harden and Ben Simmons, those were me guys. Doesn't seem like this Sixers team has me guys. Seems like they are a team. It's about us. It's about the collective. Obviously, it all runs through Joel, as it should. But they're a good team. So we're going to talk about the Eagles. We're going to talk about the negatives. But two positives to start the show: the Philadelphia Flyers, the Philadelphia 76ers. But let's talk about this Philadelphia Eagles team, because I know that's why a majority of you are here. And it's just a shame that the Eagles' last 3 games had to happen right before the Christmas holiday. But maybe they can make our Christmas day by dominating the New York Giants and Tommy Cutlets. And I told this story last night on the Legal Hands of the Face show. Quick thing about Tommy Cutlets. I'm sure you guys all saw the article where Tommy DeVito was supposed to appear at a pizzeria. There was no signed contract, so after he got some more publicity, they went back to the pizzeria. His agent went back to the pizzeria and tried to double the cost of his appearance. Pizzeria said, we can't afford that, back and forth. Well, it looks like Tommy DeVito has now made it right by going to the pizzeria for free. But in between there, my college quarterback, one of my good friends, he owns a card shop up in North Jersey. So he actually swooped in when DeVito reneged on the deal to go to the pizza shop. And he signed them to come to his card shop for a hefty penny. So Tommy DeVito was there last night signing autographs, taking pictures. He is a North Jersey sensation up there. They absolutely loved him, the turnout they had at the card shop last night for Tommy Cutlets. But hopefully, Eagles can make our Christmas by dominating Tommy Cutlets on Christmas Day. After all of us Paisans have our 7 fish on Christmas Eve, we wake up on Christmas Day and we watch Tommy DeVito get taken out by the Philadelphia Eagles. And it surprised me a little bit. 11.5-point favorites in that game. As bad as the Eagles are playing, and even though this New York Giants team has some mojo with Tommy DeVito, Eagles are currently 11.5-point favorites. If you guys are here in the chat, did that surprise you that they were that favored in that game? Looks like it probably surprised Richie MC because he's saying Tommy DeVito is going to win 21-16. But the Eagles are 11-point favorites in that game. Crazy to me. So I'd stay away from that. I'm staying away from that line. I never like playing when the games are that much of a difference in spreads because a last-minute touchdown, you never know how things go. You could dominate the whole game, win by 7. And I see Illuminati talking about DeVito's agent is a joke. Look, I actually found it amusing the first game, I think it was Monday Night Football, where they go to the crowd and they showed DeVito's agent and he's kissing Tommy's father and Tommy's father's kissing him and they're throwing the forget about it. But now I think DeVito's agent's kind of making a fool of himself. I mean, enough's enough. The green suits, the hats. Come on, man. It was funny the first time. Now you're kind of making a mockery of yourself. And I see you guys talking about the spread. Hard tackle, I'm taking 12 points, easy money. Joe Eagle taking the points. Dark skin, I would be surprised if the Birds score 11 points. Come on, man. Come on, we're going to get there. We're going to get there. I'm trying to keep it positive for a little bit, but we'll get there. All right, so let's talk about this Eagles team. And the question I had for you guys is what we are seeing with this Philadelphia Eagles team. Is this a delayed Super Bowl hangover? In the offseason, all we wanted to talk about all offseason long was, are the Eagles going to experience a Super Bowl hangover? It's all we talked about. I talked about it on my show. Every other show was talking about it. The Super Bowl hangover is real. It's hard to lose a Super Bowl, come back the next year, and have success. Well, we were a little bit spoiled because the Philadelphia Eagles came out and were winning football games. Wasn't always pretty. I talked about it yesterday. They've been trying to tell us who they are for 14 games. We just didn't want to listen because they were winning. But is what we are seeing a delayed Super Bowl hangover? And I went back and looked at the numbers because we talked about it a lot in the offseason. There's only been 3 teams ever that have lost a Super Bowl and then went back the following year to win one. So we knew this was going to be an uphill battle. And I see Richie MC asking, when were there pretty games this season? And you're not wrong. You go back and you look at the first 15 games, and I talked about them yesterday, and we could talk about them again. New England game wasn't pretty. Let Mac Jones throw for over 300 yards. The Minnesota and Tampa Bay Bucks game, I liked those games. We established the run. We had over 200 yards rushing in each game. But then you go week 4. You have to go to overtime against the Commanders. Week 5, I thought was a pretty win. Maybe not pretty being the right word, but I thought it was a nice win going on the road to LA against a good passing offense. That was a big win. Then you come out in week 6, New York Jets, clearly not pretty. 4 turnovers losing that football game. But then week 7, big game, Miami Dolphins, probably their best win. And right as I say that, I got Mike Fittery saying the same thing. The Miami game for me. That's probably, when you look at the entire season now, with hindsight being 2020, probably their best win was that Dolphins game. And I see Richie MC saying Kupp was out that game. But look, they had a good passing offense. Was Kupp out that game? I thought Cooper Kupp came back for that game. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm drawing a blank now on my memory. Did Cooper Kupp come back for that game? If you guys remember in the chat, let me know. Is Richie MC right? I thought Cooper Kupp came back for that game against the Philadelphia Eagles. I know they activated his practice window. I know he practiced that week, and now I'm drawing a blank on whether he played. I thought he did, Richie. Yeah. See, Timothy Walker saying he did. Illuminati saying he did. Yeah, Richie, I thought you were wrong on that one. He did play. It was his first game back. But the Miami game was probably the best win. Then week 8, they beat the Commanders again. Not pretty, letting Sam Howell go for close to 400 passing yards. Week 9, they beat the Cowboys at home. Never easy to beat the Dallas Cowboys. They always play them tough. But that wasn't a pretty win either. They tried to blow it at the end. They really did try to blow that one at the end. Kansas City Chiefs on the road Monday night. Hard to complain when you win on the road in Arrowhead. But again, not pretty. Almost blew it at the end. And then obviously the Buffalo Bills game gave up over 500 yards of offense. Not pretty. And then the last 3 have been disasters. So I agree with you. I forget who it was who asked the question. Well, what games were pretty wins? I really think the best win when looking back for me was the Miami Dolphins win. That was the one where it looked like Sean Desai was a defensive genius being able to shut down that Miami Dolphins team. Turns out Sean Desai didn't last more than a few weeks after that. But are we seeing a delayed Super Bowl hangover? And I just said only 3 teams have ever lost the Super Bowl and then went back the following year to win the Super Bowl, which is all of our goals this season. I did not think this season could be considered a success unless they won the Super Bowl this year. They made it to the Super Bowl last year. Simply getting to the playoffs or winning the NFC East was not my barometer of success for this Eagles team. You had to win a Super Bowl this year for me to consider it a successful season. And I knew it wasn't going to be easy. You look at the 3 teams that have lost a Super Bowl and gone back to win it, and you're talking about historic teams. The 1971 Dallas Cowboys with head coach Tom Landry. The 1972 Miami Dolphins. The 72 Dolphins, the only undefeated team in NFL history with Don Shula as their coach. And then the 2018 Patriots with Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. And just a reminder, the reason the 2018 Patriots were bouncing back from a Super Bowl loss was because the Philadelphia Eagles and Nick Foles beat them in Super Bowl 52. Just a reminder for us Eagles fans. But you look at those 3 teams that have been able to do it, and we knew this wasn't going to be easy. When you're talking about 3 teams where their head coaches were Tom Landry, Don Shula, and Bill Belichick, and you're talking about guys like Tom Brady, wasn't going to be easy. But what surprised me were how many teams were able to simply make the playoffs after losing a Super Bowl. With the Philadelphia Eagles now making the playoffs, you're talking about 40 out of 57 Super Bowl losers have made the playoffs. That's 70%. So that's why I don't consider it just a success that they're going back to the playoffs. And I don't think any of you guys are either. But 70% of Super Bowl losers make the playoffs. But only 14% of them even get back to a Super Bowl. You're only talking about 8 teams that have ever lost a Super Bowl and gotten back. So when we look at this Eagles team, as frustrated as I am, and I'm not trying to make excuses for them, but we knew this was going to be a very tough objective to lose the Super Bowl and then try to get back there. And they still can. I don't have hopes that they will. I don't think this team is anywhere near the San Francisco 49ers. But when you look at history, this shouldn't be that much of a surprise. And the 8 teams that have been able to get back to a Super Bowl after losing were obviously the 3 teams that won it, the 71 Cowboys, the 72 Dolphins, the 2018 Patriots. Then you have to go to 1992, 1991, and 1990, which was the 3 Buffalo Bills teams that all lost, the 1986 Denver Broncos, and the 1973 Minnesota Vikings. That's the last NFC team that lost a Super Bowl and was able to go back the next year. I want to read Barbara Carroll's question here. Bill, if that's true, what you're saying about going back to the Super Bowl this year, then why all season have the Eagles been promoted as favorites? Can't have it both ways. Barbara, great question. I agree with you. And that's why I think maybe we were being a little bit too optimistic for this team. Like I've been saying, they were trying to tell us who they were. Were we watching all season long a Super Bowl hangover? But yet what we kept saying was, well, they keep winning. They keep finding ways to win. But we are talking about a team, and I don't want you guys to think that I'm making excuses for this team, because I am not. The last thing I'm doing is making excuses, because I'm not happy with how things are unfolding with this team. But when you look at what they were facing, not only were they facing this Super Bowl hangover, but you've heard me mention before on the show, they were one of only 2 teams in the last 27 years, I believe, that went to a Super Bowl, lost, and had to replace both coordinators after the Super Bowl for the next season. They lost Jonathan Gannon. A lot of people were happy about that. And look where we are now. Not saying Jonathan Gannon was the greatest defensive coordinator we've ever had. But clearly, they missed JG. The guy they hired's already out. And there is no one that can deny how much this team misses Shane Steichen as an offensive coordinator. Anybody watching these games can see how much this team misses Shane Steichen. And you see the job he's doing in Indianapolis with Gardner Minshew and that Colts team. Shane Steichen was a huge loss. Huge loss. So when you factor all of these things in, the Super Bowl hangover, no Shane Steichen, new defensive coordinator, and if you follow me, you know the other thing I'm going to mention is the complete neglect of the personnel on the defensive side of the football by Howie Roseman, ignoring the linebacker position, ignoring the safety position. And you factor all that in, as I take a step back and try to take off my Eagle fan glasses, we should have expected this. We should have expected that this team wasn't going to be able to get back to a Super Bowl. And I know they still have a chance. I'm still rooting for them to do it. But what we've seen over the last 3 games, we've really been seeing all season long that this team is not the best team in the NFC. They're probably not even the second best team in the NFC. And we shouldn't have been surprised when you look at the Super Bowl hangover, when you look at losing both coordinators, and especially when you look at what Howie Roseman let happen on the defensive side of the football, losing their starting linebackers, losing their starting safeties, and putting their money into two 30-year-old corners. And I had Ray Didinger on my Legal Hands to the Face show last night, and we talked about that. So make sure you check it out because he talked a lot about aging corners and how quickly they age in the NFL, and you're seeing it right in front of us with James Bradberry. And unfortunately, guys, it's not going to get much better. James Bradberry, we went over his contract yesterday. He's making a lot of money next year, and the dead cap hit would be way too big to move on. Now, what I'd love to see, started out the show talking about John Tortorella's quote for the Philadelphia Flyers, "We got balls." Well, what I'd like to see is Nick Sirianni and Matt Patricia or Sean Desai or whoever is calling the shots on that defense. I'd like to see them have the balls to say to James Bradberry, we don't care how much money you're making. You're on the bench because we're going with the young guys who are trying to ball out for this team in Kelee Ringo and Eli Ricks. Because when Big Play Slay comes back, if Kelee Ringo keeps playing the way he played against the Seattle Seahawks, there is no way that you should be putting Ringo on the bench and letting JB do what JB is doing. So let's see if this coaching staff has the balls to say, we don't care about how much you're getting paid. We're going with the best player. Nick Sirianni preaches competition. But now, put your money where your mouth is and give the job to the guy who's out there competing, not the one that's making $17 million. Guys, we're going to take a quick break. Hit that like button for me. Keep commenting. What I want to do at the end of the show is get some questions from you guys. So keep on commenting as well. And then I want to take a look when we get back. A lot of people are comparing Jalen Hurts this season to Carson Wentz in 2018. Praying that's not the case, but we'll talk about that. Stay tuned, guys. We'll be right back.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
They're carving them up and good play calling along the way. First and goal at the 6.
On the field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Underdog Fantasy has a way for you to play alongside your favorite football team all season long with their Fantasy Pick'em game. You pick between 2 to 5 players, select whether they'll go higher or lower on one of their stats, then do what you usually do on a Sunday, watch the games. You can win up to 20 times your money in a single game by going 5 for 5. It's a fantasy game And the Sports Betting Show wants you to get involved. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. When you sign up, use the promo code WIN, and Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
And the big story on Action News?
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
EAGLES, Eagles.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back in to the Philly Sports Power Hour on this fine Wednesday. Before the break, we were talking a little bit of Flyers, a little bit of Sixers, and we were talking about this Philadelphia Eagles team, and should we have expected what we're seeing over the last 3 games? Dating all the way back to the offseason, talking about the Super Bowl hangover, losing both coordinators, and then seeing what we've seen for really 14 games now. This team trying to tell us who they were, and we kept looking past it because they were winning games. But should we have expected what we are now seeing? And with the benefit of hindsight being 2020, we should have. And I'm going to be the first to admit it. Up until about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was guilty of it too. I was guilty of it, enjoying the ride, saying all this team does is win. Let's enjoy it. But a couple of weeks ago, I started to ask the question, is this defense good enough to win a championship? Because we could see the cracks in the foundation of that defense. And that was before the San Francisco 49ers game. When we've seen what Mac Jones has done to this defense, what Sam Howell has done to this defense, what Josh Allen, who's a very good quarterback, did to this defense. But they kept finding ways to win. But the problem is not Sean Desai, not Matt Patricia. They just don't have the personnel. James Bradbury is having one of the worst seasons, if not the worst season of his career. The linebacker position has been an absolute revolving door, bringing in guys off the street. And unfortunately, Shaq Leonard, we saw in the game against Seattle why the Indianapolis Colts decided to just move on from him, not trade him and get assets back. Not cut him to be able to save any money. They were still on the hook for his contract. They simply moved on because Shaq Leonard isn't the same guy. And you saw it on Monday night against the Seattle Seahawks. Let's see where Shaq Leonard got graded by Pro Football Focus. The Pro Football Focus grades for the game against Seattle. Nick Morrow. Man, did Howie Roseman luck out or what with Nick Morrow? This is a guy they cut in training camp, only brought back to the practice squad because nobody else wanted him, and the Kobe Dean gets hurt, so they bring back Nick Morrow, and this guy is playing some of his best football. He was the highest graded defensive player on the field for your Philadelphia Eagles, graded as an 89.7. Impressive. And I see some people in the chat asking about Kayla. Unfortunately, no Kayla Santiago today. You guys know she's also the sports director for Delmarva Sports, and they had a shoot that ran over. So she apologized that she couldn't be here today. She'll be back next week, and you can check her out on the Eagles game day shows right here on JAKIB. She'll be on for halftime and postgame. So no Kayla today. You're stuck with just me, unfortunately. But you look at Nick Morrow, he got graded at an 89.7. Shaq Leonard, the third worst graded defensive player in that game at a 43. Put that into perspective, guys. 89.7 for Morrow, a 43 for Shaq Leonard. There was only 2 defenders who had a lesser grade than Shaq. Patrick Johnson, who got his first defensive snaps of the season. He's been mainly a special teams player. And Josh Jobe. And Jobe only played 2 snaps. Patrick Johnson played 8. Shaq Leonard in 28 snaps of 43, third worst. And guess who the 4th worst graded defender was? Shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody out there. Let's see it in the chat. See who the first person in the chat is to say who was the 4th worst graded defensive player on the field Monday night per PFF. Shouldn't be a hard one to figure that one out. I don't see anybody in the chat guessing this one. James Bradbury. There it is. Barbara Carroll knows. Brad Patterson checking in. Yoda Black. Wine Niners Wine. Everybody saying Bradbury. Even on TikTok. I got B-High 8. James Bradbury. That's right. James Bradbury was terrible in that game. And we didn't need Pro Football Focus to tell us. You saw the numbers. Targeted 7 times, gave up 7 catches. Final drive, targeted 4 times, gave up 4 catches. They went on a 92-yard drive to win the game at the end. James Bradbury gave up 87 of the 92 yards. So that's why I say, does this team and organization have the guts to say, we don't care how much money James Bradbury's making? We're going to put him on the bench, and we're going to roll with the young guys. Let's see what we have in Keely Ringo and Eli Ricks, because those guys are trying the ball out. And I told you the best defender in coverage was Keely Ringo. Eli Ricks was okay. He got graded as a 60. A lot better than Bradbury. Bradbury had a 40 grade in coverage. Josh Jobe had a 37 grade in coverage. I'm going with Ringo and Ricks when Slay comes back. Let those guys go out there and battle. Let them learn. We should have been doing it earlier in the season, especially with Sidney Brown. Because you guys see, Sidney Brown plays with reckless abandon. I love the way this kid plays, but he's raw. He needs to temper it down a little bit. He needs to learn that things are a little bit different in the NFL than they are in college. And there's 2 things that need to happen here. One, he just needs more game experience. So let's give it to him, especially over the next 3 weeks against some pretty bad offenses. Giants' offense is terrible, guys. Absolutely terrible. And I know we all love the story, or some of us do, about Tommy DeVito and the juice he's brought to the Giants. They still stink on offense. But Sidney Brown, there's 2 things. One, in-game experience. The other is coaching. And that's the big question mark I have. Because I mentioned in the first segment about the Super Bowl hangover and losing both coordinators, Jonathan Gannon and Shane Steichen, excuse me. But one of the things that we don't talk about enough, and we have talked about it on this show, was the loss of Denard Wilson. And now, as we sit here, after the Philadelphia Eagles decide to move on from Sean Desai, the fact that they didn't give that defensive coordinator job to Denard Wilson is even more frustrating. Because Denard Wilson was your D-backs coach last season. For the number 1 passing defense in the entire NFL, Denard Wilson was your D-backs coach. When Jonathan Gannon got the job in Arizona, all of your veterans, Darius Slay, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, all of these secondary players went to bat for Denard Wilson and said he should be the defensive coordinator. Philadelphia Eagles decide to go in a different direction. They hire Sean Desai, and because of it, Denard Wilson said, I'm out of here. You're not going to give me the defensive coordinator job, and you're going to go with an unknown like Sean Desai? Well, guess what? I'm gone. And look at the job Denard Wilson's doing in Baltimore with that Ravens defense. And if Sean Desai had turned out to be the next Jim Johnson, okay, great call, Howie. Great call, Nick. But you've already moved on from Sean Desai after 13 games. And you lost one of the best defensive backs coach in the NFL because of it. So I don't know the type of coaching Keely Ringo and Sidney Brown and Josh Jobe and Eli Ricks are getting. But it would have been nice. It would have been really nice if they had Denard Wilson back there. But another great decision by Howie Roseman on the defensive side of the football. That, if this team doesn't go back to a Super Bowl, and I see BMO Careful saying that's not true. Wilson didn't want to leave. Nick decided to let him go. That's already been reported. I don't know if I agree with that. I know what's being reported. But why would Nick Sirianni decide to let go your defensive backs coach on the number one passing defense in the league? So I know what's being reported. To me, that doesn't pass the smell test, man. Denard Wilson wanted the defensive coordinator job, and they passed him over, and now he's not here anymore. And if that is in fact true, that Nick Sirianni decided to let him go, then Nick Sirianni deserves even more blame, and Howie Roseman deserves even more blame. Denard Wilson was a great coach. Made me lose my train of thought for a second because it just gets me so angry. Like that would actually make things better, that Sirianni didn't want Denard Wilson. So to me, that gets me even more furious if it is in fact that they decided to move on from Denard Wilson. But if this Eagles team doesn't go back to a Super Bowl, when we look at this season, the reason it would have gone off the rails is because of Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni's decisions on the defensive side of the football. And we'll get to the offense in a second, but it's the personnel they've rolled out on the defense. It's the coaches they've put in place on the defense. And it's that complete neglect on the defensive side of the football that is why this team finds themselves in the position they're in. But when we go to the offensive side, because we can't absolve the offensive players and coaches either. I think that's why they lost that Seattle game. Your offense needs to put up more than 17 damn points against one of the worst defenses in the league in the Seattle Seahawks. Defense did its job for most of the game. You still can't let Drew Lock, a backup quarterback, go 92 yards in a minute 24 seconds. But they did enough to win that game. Your offense has to put up more than 17 points. And what's crazy, guys, is a lot of people wanted Matt Patricia to be more aggressive. I talked about wanting him to be more aggressive. This is probably going to piss a lot of people off. Sean Desai was blitzing about 22% of the time, which was pretty average in the NFL. Unless you're Wink Martindale or Brian Flores, you don't blitz a lot in this league anymore. So Sean Desai was blitzing about 22% of the time, and everybody was angry. Need to blitz more, need to blitz more. Drew Lock on Monday night dropped back 35 times. Matt Patricia blitzed him twice. That's 5%. 5%. Now, I am not one of these guys that thinks you need to blitz. I understand why you don't blitz a lot in the NFL. These quarterbacks are too good, and they can beat you. But when I say these quarterbacks are too good, Drew Lock is not in that conversation. Drew Lock is a backup quarterback. How you wouldn't dial up some blitzes against a quarterback as bad as Drew Lock doesn't make sense to me. You blitz this guy twice. And again, I'm not blaming the defense for that loss. The offense needs to score more than 17 points. But all of us who were hopeful that maybe Matt Patricia would be a little bit more aggressive, he was anything but more aggressive. 2 blitzes out of 35 dropbacks. But it was the offense that lost him that football game. And a lot of people now are raising the interesting question, is Jalen Hurts the Carson Wentz of 2018? And let me get this out of the way first. Those are not my feelings about Jalen Hurts. I think when you make the comparisons between Jalen Hurts and Carson Wentz, you could not be talking about more different people than Jalen Hurts and Carson Wentz. These guys are nowhere near the same. Nowhere near the same guy. And I get why people are making the comparison when you look at the numbers and you look at what's happened both years. So you look at Carson Wentz in 2017. 11-2 before he gets hurt. 33 touchdown passes. Only 7 interceptions. 3 fumbles. And then you look at him in 2018, 5-6 before he gets hurt. And through only 11 games, 13 turnovers, 7 interceptions, 6 fumbles. So I get some of the comparison. You saw Carson Wentz look unstoppable in 2017. You saw him come out in 2018 committing turnovers, losing football games, offense looking like it wasn't in a rhythm. Very similar to what you're seeing this year from Jalen Hurts. In 2022, Jalen Hurts 14-1, 22 touchdown passes, only 6 interceptions, only 8 turnovers the entire year. So far this season, 17 turnovers. So it does look like a similar story. And you also have the common theme of 2017. Carson Wentz has Frank Reich, his offensive coordinator. Frank Reich gets a head coaching job in Indianapolis. Last year, Jalen Hurts, Shane Steichen gets a head coaching job in Indianapolis. And now you've seen Jalen Hurts, the offense, look like it lacks rhythm, look like it lacks creativity. The turnovers are up. So I understand why people are trying to make the comparison, but let me tell you, these guys couldn't be more different. And I know there are still a lot of Jalen Hurts haters out there. And for the Jalen Hurts haters, the last few games have made you guys really happy, because it gives you more of a platform to talk about how Jalen Hurts is overrated. But what we saw from Jalen Hurts last season, in my opinion, was not a fluke. The growth that we saw from Jalen Hurts from his rookie season to last year was not a fluke. This is a player who has one of the best work ethics we have ever seen from a Philadelphia Eagles player. He has that desire to consistently want to get better. I think a lot of what you are seeing with Jalen Hurts this season is his lack of faith in Brian Johnson and Nick Sirianni with the game plans, with the play calling. Jalen Hurts needs to be better. I'm not excusing him. But you're seeing a guy that doesn't look like he has faith in the play calls. That doesn't look like he has faith in the play designs. And I did a video on Instagram and TikTok this morning about the philosophy of this Eagles organization, in my opinion, is the problem with what you're seeing on offense. The philosophy of always wanting to go for the big play. And I see Crawley saying it right here. Hurts refuses to take checkdowns. And this is why I asked the question. Is that Jalen Hurts, or is that the philosophy of Nick Sirianni and Brian Johnson to always want the big play? You've heard Nick Sirianni talk about it at length in the past, that he thinks NFL games are won on big plays, making big plays on offense, stopping big plays on defense. It's why they're so passive on the defensive side of the football. But what you're seeing is an offense whose philosophy is to constantly go for the big play. They don't like the checkdowns. They don't like to run the football. They don't like the long, methodical drives. Look at the first drive of the game against Seattle. It was beautiful. 15 plays. 10 of them were runs. Results in a touchdown. And then they get away from it. So I agree that Jalen Hurts needs to be better. And Jalen Hurts needs to check the ball down and go to the open receiver if it's there. But the problem I see is the way he's being coached by Brian Johnson and Nick Sirianni is to not take the check down, is to not take the easy route, the high percentage play. They want him to take his deep shots. They want to try to hit the big plays. And I think that's hurting this offense. Definitely hurt them on Monday night against the Seattle, for sure. So, and again, I'm not absolving Jalen Hurts. And I see some people in the chat talking about, shouldn't he throw to open receivers? Yes, he should. But I think when we talk about this offense and you talk about the issues with Brian Johnson as the offensive coordinator, I think it's on the coaches as well, getting in Jalen Hurts' ear, coaching him up that way to take the higher percentage throw. That's not what they want him to do. They want him to take his shots. I don't like the offensive philosophy at all. And you look at this team, and I don't understand why they refuse to run the football. When last year they went to the Super Bowl, top 5 rushing offense. 2017, win a Super Bowl, top 5 rushing offense. But that's not the way they want to win football games. It's not the way Jeffrey Lurie wants to win. It's not the way Howie Roseman wants to win. And it's not the way Nick Sirianni wants to win. And that flows all the way down to your quarterback and to this offense. And it's the reason why we see him make some bad decisions. Look at Seattle. Going deep to Quez Watkins with 8 minutes left. Going deep to A.J. Brown with 13 seconds left. Yes, that's on Jalen Hurts too. But when it is your organization's philosophy to go for the big play, and that's how you're being coached every single day in practice, that's what you're going to do on the field. And guys, we're running out of time. This hour always flies by. I wanted to get to some questions in the chat. Doesn't look like we're going to be able to today. But make sure you're following me on all your social media platforms. I got some good content coming out today, as always. And like we end every single show, a little today in sports history. Going to go way back, December 20th, 1905. Philadelphia Jack O'Brien. Philadelphia's own Jack O'Brien, referred to as Philadelphia Jack O'Brien, won his world light heavyweight title after defending champion Bob Fitzsimmons of England retires in round 13 of 20 in San Francisco. Philadelphia Jack O'Brien wins the world championship. in round 13 of 20. How crazy is that? You watch these old Rocky movies and championship fights were 15 rounds. Well, back in the day, 20 rounds. And before that, it just kept going. Boxing used to be a brutal, brutal sport. But Philadelphia, Jack O'Brien, that's our today in sports history. Appreciate all of you guys in the chat. This hour went by very quickly, but we'll be back tomorrow, 10 o'clock, talking more Philadelphia Eagles. We'll be joined by Eagles insider Dave Spadaro. Do me a favor, guys. Hit that like button and head on over to all your podcast platforms if you want to check out my interview with Ray Didinger. You can check out Legal Hands to the Face. And if you do check it out, leave me a review on the podcast. Appreciate everybody. Hit that like button. Hit that share button. I'll be back tomorrow, 10 o'clock. Right here on the Philly Sports Power Hour. And as always, guys, go Birds.
Go for the pulls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.